Al-24 Midnight News coming to you live from Algiers. I'm Abdurrahim Kashour and these are today's top stories. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune expressed his willingness to provide all the necessary means to develop the journalism field in the country. And after another fragile and frequently violated truce ran out, shelling in the Sudanese capital disrupted aid delivery efforts. Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani cancelled in the last minute an official visit to Paris following comments made by France's Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin on Rome's migration policy. Also in Europe, Russia claimed Thursday that the White House was behind the drone attack on the Kremlin, which was an attempt to assassinate President Vladimir Putin. Hello again and welcome. Starting from Algeria, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune said that Algeria's position towards Syria had not changed, stressing that it wouldn't be possible to isolate Damascus from its Arab environment, being founding member of the Arab League. During his periodic meeting with the Algerian press, Abdelmajid Tebboune emphasized that Algeria's outpouring of solidarity with Syrian people emanate from heart, is not fueled by any political considerations.
أبداً ما تغيرنا بالنسبة لسوريا، وسوريا عمرها ما تغيرت بالنسبة لنا. احنا الشيء اللي نقوم به على أساس أن سوريا عضو مؤسس للجامعة العربية. تعزلها ولا ما تعزلهاش، ما تنحي لهاش الحقوق تاعها، قدرش تمحيها. احنا ما غيرنا والو، احنا كما كان أمس واليوم. الهبة اللي هبت الجزائر لمساعدة شقيق نضرب الزلزال كانت هبة يعني من القلب، ما فيها لا حسابات سياسية ولا. الباقي فيه نظام دولي فارض نفسه على الضعيف قبل القوي. نتمنى إن شاء الله باش الأمور تتغير، باش الرؤية العربية تعاود تتغير، وهذا التشرذم اللي رانا فيه اليوم يعاود يرجع قوة ويرجع نظام عربي. احنا قلناها مرارا وقلتها في أيام اجتماع الجامعة العربية، من المفروض نأمن احنا أول من يأمن بقوتنا.
Also, President Abdelmajid Tebboune described NGO's classifications of freedom of speech and the press as a selective, pointing out that some were based on false information.
تركيز على أن الجزائر ليست بلد الحريات، لا في الصحافة ولا في غير الصحافة، وافتراء على الجزائر. أولا الجزائر عندها ثقة في أبنائها أغلبهم، لما نقولش الكل. ثانيا لما نشوف الزخم نتاع الجرايد المكتوبة اللي موجودة في الجزائر ماهيش موجودة في مكان آخر، ما عدا الدول ربما الراقية. صعب باش تتكلم على هذه المؤسسات اللي تعطي نفسها حجم دولي. ريبورتر سون فرونتيير تبقى مهما كان الحال إنه وان جي، ماهيش تصنيف اللي لازم نخضع عليه يعني ناخذه بالحسبان. هو التصنيف تاع الأمم المتحدة، مؤسسات الأمم المتحدة. التصنيف تاع لي زو ان جي اولا التصنيف تاع الناس اللي خلقوا هاد لو ان جي، الناس اللي يسيروا هاد لو ان جي واللي يوجهوا لو ان جي.
Within the same meeting, the Algerian head of the state expressed his readiness to provide all the necessary means for the development of the press, provided that a general and strong trade union organization is guaranteed.
إمكانيات احنا مستعدين نوضعوها تحت تصرف كل الجرايد بدون استثناء، ولكن لازم أولا التنظيم. أنا تكلمت عن التنظيم باش تنظموا نفوسكم في نقابة وفي كذا. ثانيا لما تكون الروح الوطنية عالية، المقالات تكتب بروح وطنية، حتى الانتقاد يكون انتقاد لأن الشيء اللي تنتقدوه كان دون مستوى الوطن ولا كان دون مستوى الرؤية اللي تشوفوها أنتم.
While the presidency is still, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Thursday the visiting Libyan Foreign Minister Najla al-Mangoush at the headquarters of the Presidency of the Republic. It is worth recalling that the Libyan Foreign Minister also met with the Algerian counterpart Ahmed Attaf and discussed such issues as the opening of 2 border crossing points, land, sea and air transport, joint investments, as well as groundwater management.
I was honored today by visiting the presidential palace on the invitation of His Excellency President Abdelmajid Tebboune. I am always happy to return to brotherly Algeria. The meeting was fruitful as usual and marked by the historic relations between the two countries. We thank him for the warm welcome and hospitality. We exchanged on many issues related to bilateral relations, cooperation in the field of groundwater and cooperation in the field of land crossings, in addition to discussing the latest developments in neighboring Sudan and how we can play a positive role in the ceasefire. I am always happy with these visits, for they are very important and further strengthen bilateral relations and bilateral cooperation in the economic and political field.
In the same line of thought, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, received on Thursday his Libyan counterpart, Najla al-Mangoush, who is on a working visit to Algeria at the head of large delegation, including, in particular, the Minister of Transport and the President of the Libyan Investment Authority, Mohammed Khatal, on what's follow.
Ahmed Attaf and Najla al-Mangoush chaired at the headquarters of the Foreign Ministry in Algiers a working session in the presence of delegations from the two countries, focusing on the prospects for strengthening bilateral cooperation, issues related to the opening of border crossings, land, sea and air transport, common investments and groundwater management.
The two ministers chaired a working session devoted to examining prospects of strengthening bilateral cooperation, issues related to the opening of border crossings, land, sea and air transport, common investments and groundwater management.
Meanwhile, the Libyan foreign minister informed Mr. Attaf of the latest developments in the political process carried out under the aegis of the United Nations to end the crisis in Libya. In this regard, the head of Algerian diplomacy renewed Algeria's support for the stability and unity of Libya and the process leading to parliamentary and presidential elections.
Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf received from his Libyan counterpart a presentation on the latest developments of the UN-led political process in a bid to end the crisis in Libya and reiterated Algeria's willingness to support the unity and stability in the brotherly country, as well as its backing of all initiatives likely to guarantee consensus among Libya's sons in order to move forward with the organization of presidential and parliamentary elections in the country.
On the same occasion, the two parties also examined issues of common interest on the Maghreb and Arab scene, notably the developments related to the Western Sahara cause and the conflict region in Sudan.
Back to presidency activities, the Algerian President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, received on Thursday in Algiers the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Zimbabwe Republic, Jacob Modenda, who stressed that President Tebboune had affirmed his support for the Zimbabwean people, as well as the need to raise political relations and economic partnership between the two countries. The reception took place at the Algerian Presidency headquarters in the presence of the National People's Assembly President Brahim Boughali and the Presidency Cabinet Director Mohamed Al-Nadir Al-Arbawi. The International Monetary Fund announced the imminent conclusion of an agreement with Tunisia, indicating that it is in the process of mobilizing other sufficient funds to finance the reform program, something that raised hopes for the possibility of signing an agreement between Tunisia and the World Bank after the negotiations between the two sides were suspended 2 months ago. In Africa, still, the Sudanese army announced its approval of the IGAD initiative to deal with the current crisis, which included a proposal to extend the current truce by a week, at a time when the capital, Al-Khartoum, witnessed violent clashes between the army and the rapid support forces, while the United Nations regretted its failure to stop the war.
The armed forces expressed their approval of the IGAD proposal, based on the principle of African solutions to the issues of the continent, and we hope that the rebels will abide by the requirements of the proposed armistice.
Our forces still control 90% of the 3 cities of Khartoum and affirm their full commitment to the declared humanitarian truce, and warn that their commitment to the truce is for humanitarian purposes only.
To the Middle East now, 4 Palestinians, including a young woman, were shot and killed by Zionist occupation forces in a separate incident in the West Bank. This brings the total number of Palestinians killed by occupation forces this year to over 100 killed. Hussein Berkan.
In the latest wave of violence, Zionist forces killed 4 Palestinians in the West Bank, including a young woman in the town of Hawara. The killings occurred just hours after the occupation forces killed 3 other Palestinians during a raid in Nablus, bringing the total death toll to 108 since the beginning of the year. The violence has sparked widespread condemnation from Palestinian officials and factions, who have condemned the continued aggression against Palestinian cities and the daily killings of Palestinians.
Another crime committed by the Israeli occupation army is the killing of 3 Palestinians and fighters of Al-Qassam brigades in Nablus. This crime will not stop the resistance, and certainly the occupation will pay the price for its crimes against our people and for the assassination today.
Palestinian spokesperson have also stated that the latest killings will not discourage the Palestinian people from continuing their resistance and avenging the blood of the martyrs. After the killings, a comprehensive strike took place in Nablus to mourn the souls of the martyrs killed by the occupation forces. There is a growing popular anger at the continuing crimes of the Zionist occupation against the Palestinians, and the situation in the West Bank remains tense.
Foreign ministers of the Arab States League will hold emergency meetings on Sunday on the conflict in Sudan and Syria's readmission to the bloc, according to a diplomat quoted by media. The diplomat said on a condition of anonymity that it was decided to hold 2 extraordinary sessions of the Council of the Arab States League at the level of Arab foreign ministers on Sunday. In Europe now, Italy's foreign ministers cancelled a trip to Paris Thursday after a French minister criticized Rome's migration policy and fresh spate over the continuous issue between the 2 nations. Hussein Berkan on What's Photo.
In a radio interview in Paris on Thursday, Gérald Darmanin, France's interior minister, said in comments that risk fueling tensions between Paris and Rome that Italy faced a very serious migration crisis, and he drew parallels between Meloni and French far-right leader Marine Le Pen.
Oui, il y a un afflux de personnes migrantes et notamment de mineurs.
Yes, there is an influx of migrants, and in particular minors, because Mrs. Meloni and, moreover, the far-right government chosen by the French of Mrs. Marine Le Pen is incapable of solving the migratory issues for which they were elected.
News of his comments came as Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani was preparing to fly to Paris to see his French counterpart the same day, a trip that was aimed partly at improving relations between the 2 European Union countries, which have grown increasingly brittle. Italian Foreign Minister called off the trip to Paris and slammed Darmanin's unacceptable comments, which he considered as an insult to Italy.
I will not go to Paris for the planned meeting with Catherine Colonna. The minister's Gérald Darmanin offenses against the government and Italy, they are unacceptable. This is not the spirit in which common European challenges should be tackled.
Paris later sought to ease the tensions, hoping that Tajani's meeting with the French counterpart Catherine Colonna, scheduled for Thursday evening, could be rescheduled soon. Earlier Thursday, before Tajani cancelled his trip, France's Foreign Affairs Ministry tried to avert a new diplomatic crisis with a statement.
I spoke to my colleague Antonio Tajani on the telephone. I told him that the relationship between Italy and France is based on mutual respect between our two countries and between their leaders. I hope to be able to welcome him soon in Paris.
Traditional Franco-Italian tensions on migration issues seem to have calmed down earlier this year after months of ups and downs between both governments. However, a fresh diplomatic spat over the continuous migration issue between the two nations would fuel tensions again.
On Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan was within sight. The Secretary has hosted the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Washington since the May 1st for talks aimed at cooling tension between the two South Caucasus rivals. These have risen recently since Azerbaijan installed a checkpoint on the key road linking Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous region inside Azerbaijan populated mostly by ethnic Armenians.
The two sides have discussed some very tough issues over the last few days, and they've made tangible progress on a durable peace agreement. I hope that they see, and I believe that they do, as I do, that there is an agreement within sight, within reach, and achieving that agreement would be, I think, not only historic, but would be profoundly in the interests of the people of Azerbaijan and Armenia, and would have very positive effects even beyond their two countries.
Russia on Thursday accused the United States of being behind the alleged Ukrainian drone attack on the Kremlin. Washington, meanwhile, has dismissed as ridiculous Russia's claim that it was responsible for a drone attack against Kremlin. Nabil Khazini.
In the morning following the attack on the Kremlin, there were visibly dark marks on the dome roof of the Russian Senate. Behind these black spots a story, but the mastermind of this tale is now debated. Russia accuses the United States of orchestrating the fiery drone attack on the Kremlin and speculates this was an assassination attempt against the Russian president.
Such attempts to distance themselves in Kiev and in Washington are just absolutely laughable. We are well aware that the decision on such actions and terrorist attacks is not made in Kiev, but in Washington. And then Kiev does what it's told to do.
The White House immediately denied any involvement in the alleged drone attack on the complex of the Russian presidency, calling the Russian narrative ludicrous. Washington went even further and said it's not even aware of the details of what happened.
One thing I can tell you for certain is that the United States was not involved in this incident in any way, contrary to Mr. Peskov's lies. And that's what they are, just lies.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has earlier dismissed the Russian accusations that his country was behind the attack. So, could Ukraine actually be behind such a very complex operation?
It is technically possible. Ukraine has several types of drones that can fit the profile. For example, its newly developed UJ-22 drone can actually fly the distance. It's commercial drone that they acquired from China. It's Mugin 5 cargo drone, which can be basically purchased online and could be refitted into a military drone. That drone can fly several hundred kilometers, and it was used in previous attacks.
This is another drone that was captured flying over the sky of Kiev. The Ukrainian defense says it was downed. These last drones incidents raise more questions on whether we are on the brink of a different phase of war, a more dangerous one.
In similar line of thought, President Vladimir Putin made his first public appearance following the announcement of the Kremlin drone incident, as shown on Russian state television. In this TV broadcast, Russia's Economic Development Minister Maxim Reshetnikov and President Putin spoke about the state of Russian economy after the COVID pandemic and the circumstances surrounding the annexation of parts of Ukraine. Reshetnikov emphasized that the Russian economy showed resilience to external shocks, while Putin said America and Europe prefer not to talk about Western countries' borrowings amid the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to soaring inflation.
Our economy demonstrates resilience to external shocks and the ability to develop often regardless of external circumstances. It was also the case during COVID pandemic, because in 2020 our economy suffered less than many other countries and recovered faster.
They prefer not to talk about it now. I watch Western analytics, sometimes I watch European and American news, but this is completely silenced. No one actually talks about it at the expert level.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell called on Russia on Thursday not to use what it called a drone attack on the Kremlin as a pretext to escalate the conflict in Ukraine. Moscow said 2 drones had been used to attack Putin's residence in the Kremlin in the night on Wednesday, but had been disabled by Russian defenses. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kiev had nothing to do with this incident.
We call Russia not to use this alleged attack as an excuse to continue the escalation of the war. This is what worries us. What worries us is this can be used in order to justify more conscription of people, soldiers, more attacks to Ukraine. The most important thing that we have to continue doing is to support Ukraine militarily, politically, and economically. And the best solution for the war, the only solution for the war, is Russia stopping the attack and withdrawing their troops from Ukraine.
During an interview with the British television channel GB News, former US President Donald Trump made interesting remarks by saying that if he were still president, he would have ended the Russian-Ukrainian war in 24 hours. The 45th president claimed that the matter is easy and that he would use his personal relationships with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to help bring an end to the conflict in a single day.
So if I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. A lot of it has to do with the money. A lot of it has to do with the military, that we're giving. But I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped. That war is a disaster.
Still with US, the White House published new calculations Wednesday warning about the potential damage to US economy in the event of debt default. The White House warned that a prolonged default could cause 8.3 million job losses and the stock market to tumble 45%. On May 9th, President Joe Biden will have a meeting with congressional leaders to try to find a way to resolve the approaching crisis. Following reports saying that NATO was planning to set up an office in Japan to facilitate consultations with allies in the region, China said Thursday that high vigilance was needed in the face of NATO's eastward expansion. Chinese Foreign Ministry said Asia was a promising land of cooperation and development and should not become a battle arena for geopolitical competitions.
NATO's continual eastward expansion in the Asia-Pacific region and its intervention in regional affairs will inevitably destroy regional peace and stability and push for bloc confrontation, which calls for high vigilance from countries in the region.
Ending up with sport, according to French sports daily newspaper L'Équipe, Lionel Messi will not have his contract renewed at the end of the season with Paris Saint-Germain following an unauthorized trip to Saudi Arabia. The Portuguese Messi, who signed an optional third season clause in his contract while he first arrived, club officials have decided not to activate it. The 35-year-old was given a 2-week suspension on Tuesday because instead of practicing with his team after a 3-1 loss to Lorient at home in Ligue 1 on Sunday, he traveled to Saudi Arabia.
I totally agree with the decision of PSG officials. He has not honored his commitments. He was supposed to bring us back to the Champions League. He didn't bring it back. He was bad. I'm not a fan of his character. I was expecting more from him. It's not that difficult.
It's a good thing for the club. It would be nice to let go of a big salary, and Messi was struggling since the start of the season. In fact, there are too many stars in the team, so it's good to discipline them. Obviously, you have to get tough. It's important.
And rumors said he will join Cristiano Ronaldo in Saudi Arabia. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, good night.